It was less than a week ago that Vince McMahon resigned from WWE and TKO due to the shocking allegations made in a lawsuit filed by ex-WWE employee Janel Grant. McMahon has denied all the allegations against him, but has resigned, as he put it, out of respect to WWE and its fans, though that won't stop this lawsuit from moving forward. While speaking with News Nation, Janel Grant's lawyer Ann Callis shared her perspective on the situation and said that McMahon's resignation from TKO is not enough. She also mentioned that her office has received numerous individuals willing to come forward to attest the toxic culture that has been prevalent in WWE, stating, "My office and my inbox have had a barrage of people wanting to come forward to attest about this culture of corruption and also possible victims. We are just beginning now to wade through all this, but we're frankly overwhelmed." Callis said she'd been overwhelmed by the influx of information, but emphasized that Grant wants justice and a change of culture in the WWE where everyone can feel comfortable. She said, "Grant wants justice because she wants to change the culture that is going on in the WWE. She wants to help other victims. She thinks by speaking out and coming forward first that others will feel emboldened and encouraged to come forth. The WWE is a vastly different place than it was 7 days ago, but McMahon may not be the last domino to fall, and we'll continue to follow this situation closely for further updates." The lawsuit doesn't just implicate Vince McMahon, as it also mentions John Laurinaitis, who was removed from WWE in 2022 shortly after Vince's temporary retirement. Grant alleges McMahon shared explicit content of her without consent involving other WWE employees, unnamed executives and stars, directing her to engage in sexual activities with them. Laurinaitis is, according to the suit, one of the names Grant was trafficked to, and via his attorney Edward Brennan, the former general manager claimed he was a victim like Miss Grant. Mr. Laurinaitis denies the allegations in the misguided complaint and will be vigorously defending these charges in court, not the media. Like the plaintiff, Mr. Laurinaitis is a victim in this case, not a predator. The truth will come out. In response to a follow-up question seeking clarification that he was asserting Vince McMahon as the predator and Laurinaitis, like Grant, as a victim, Brennan stated, "Read the allegations, read the federal statute. Power, control, employment supervisory capacity, dictatorial sexual demands with repercussions if not met. Count how many times in the complaint Vince exerts control over both of them. Unlike McMahon, Laurinaitis was unable to worm his way back into WWE in January 2023, and the former head of talent is hoping to prove his innocence if this situation makes it to court." The McMahon scandal came mere days after WWE announced a blockbuster deal with Netflix, one that'll see Raw move to the streaming platform in January of next year. This week, Netflix hosted their own press event where Chief Content Officer Bela Bajaria was asked about McMahon and how he could affect the $5 billion deal. In response, Bajaria made it clear that McMahon is gone from WWE, stating that he's not here anymore, so will seemingly have no role or impact on the deal between the two sides. McMahon's resignation marks the first time in WWE history that an immediate McMahon family member hasn't held a position of power in a truly historic time in professional wrestling. Vince McMahon may be gone from WWE, but that has left those in the company dealing with the fallout from his resignation, including NXT head and McMahon confidant Shawn Michaels. Speaking during the NXT Vengeance Day media call, Michaels was asked about protective measures for vulnerable NXT talent and recognized the need for improvement. Michaels also expressed sadness about the situation while making clear that he had limited involvement in corporate decisions and noted updated regulations from 2022. HBK also emphasized the importance of providing a secure working environment for talent and commended the NXT team for its efforts in this regard. Regarding conversations with NXT talent about Vince McMahon's allegations, Michaels confirmed everyone's awareness of the situation and expressed sadness surrounding this incident. Shawn once again emphasized that NXT takes the development of young talent seriously and is aware of the challenges young talent face when leaving home to pursue their wrestling dreams. Michaels concluded by saying that if an NXT superstar has any concerns, then they are always free to ask questions, as he wants to have a strong working relationship with everyone in the PC. This situation is very serious, and there's a huge spotlight on WWE right now, and Shawn Michaels is committed to making NXT a safe and thriving environment for the superstars of tomorrow. Unlike Vince McMahon's previous resignation, the former WWE chairman doesn't have the same sway that allowed him to force his way back into the company in January 2023. While speaking on Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer highlighted the contrast between Vince McMahon's recent departure from WWE and his last one, which were handled differently. Meltzer noted how the first time Vince left, it came after he appeared on several episodes of WWE TV, and Stephanie McMahon had a whole segment encouraging fans to chant "Thank you, Vince." In contrast, McMahon's departure this year has seen him effectively erased from WWE, with Triple H avoiding saying his name at the Royal Rumble press conference. Similarly, McMahon wasn't mentioned on SmackDown, and Meltzer said it's unlikely he'll have his name mentioned on WWE TV for the foreseeable future, if ever again. It was said that there was no point in mentioning McMahon's name outside of historical comments, as it'd be difficult to recall the history of WWE without mentioning McMahon's role in things. Pro wrestling wouldn't be what it is today without Vince McMahon, but WWE is ready to move on from him, so don't expect the proverbial red carpet for McMahon, unlike his previous departure. But what do you make of this shocking situation? Let us know in the comments down below. On next week's AEW Dynamite, Tony Khan is set to make a big announcement, which according to reports is expected to be the long-anticipated arrival of Mercedes Moné. Moné was recently talking with WWE, though these talks broke down over money, but it turns out that AEW wanted to feature Moné far sooner than next week. While speaking on Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer revealed that AEW was supposed to announce Mercedes Moné's debut on last week's Collision before WWE's scandal changed plans. The idea being that had her debut been announced last week, it would have been lost in the sleaziness of the lawsuit against Vince McMahon that has been dominating headlines. Instead, Moné is now expected to be confirmed next week, where there'll be a lot more attention on what Tony Khan has to say and less on McMahon and his resignation. If it isn't Mercedes Moné, the announcement could be a show in Boston or the signing of Kazuchika Okada, and whatever it is, AEW hasn't been able to share the news when they wanted to. Now, Brock Lesnar was supposed to be a part of the Royal Rumble until he was pulled from the men's match due to his connection to the Vince McMahon lawsuit. Lesnar is no longer expected to face Dominic Mysterio at this month's Elimination Chamber event, and now WWE has taken another step to distance themselves from him. As PW Insider reports, Lesnar has been removed from 2K's Supercard digital collectible game, which many players spotted and turned to PW Insider to confirm. The report reads, "In asking around, we've confirmed Lesnar was indeed pulled from the game. It would appear that 2K, as a licensee for WWE, is following the company's lead after WWE backed off on using Lesnar last weekend at the Royal Rumble event. Lesnar was slated to return and begin his WrestleMania season storyline, but in the wake of the Janel Grant lawsuit filed against WWE, Vince McMahon, and John Laurinaitis several days before, we are told the company chose to withdraw Lesnar's involvement." PW Insider also noted that fans should expect to see the legend downplayed as much as possible going forward by 2K and other licensees. Some in WWE believe Lesnar is done and that this lawsuit marks the end of his career, and while we can't say that for certain, the future isn't looking good for the ex-UFC heavyweight champion. On this week's episode of AEW Dynamite, Chris Jericho took on Kyle Fletcher, and despite the best efforts of the ROH television champion, it was Jericho who scored the win. That win came about despite a scary botch during the match, as at one point, Fletcher and Jericho were perched near the top rope, and Fletcher was going for what looked like a Falcon Arrow. Even before the move was executed, both wrestlers fell on the mat in a haphazard manner, and Jericho was incredibly lucky that his head didn't hit the turnbuckle on the way down. After his win, Konosuke Takeshita confronted Jericho as he will face the 53-year-old star on the next episode of Dynamite, and we can only hope a similar botch is not a factor in their upcoming match. When not competing in the ring, Chris Jericho can be found touring with his band Fozzy, but during his recent cruise, Jericho performed a cover of another artist. Decked in an attire paying tribute to the late David Bowie, Jericho performed a frankly bizarre rendition of The Weeknd's Blinding Lights, which was the theme to WrestleMania 36. In the comments to his TikTok video, fans slated the performance, believing Jericho was off-key throughout the song and was seemingly tone-deaf when performing. Jericho may be one of the all-time greats in the ring, but his musical career often received mixed reviews, and that was exactly the case with his performance on his Wrestling at Sea cruise. With CM Punk set to miss WrestleMania 40, WWE wasted no time on this week's Raw by trying to find a new challenger for Seth Rollins, which could end up being Cody Rhodes. On Raw, Rollins encouraged Rhodes to face him at WrestleMania instead of Roman Reigns, with the 2024 Men's Royal Rumble winner saying he'll think about Seth's idea. On Twitter, Rollins made his point even clearer, sharing a video asking if Cody wants to be a champion like Hulk Hogan, or if he wants to be a champion like the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. In the caption, Rollins alluded to the past being Cody's North Star, alluding to the idea that Dusty has always been what guides Cody, so the World Heavyweight Championship is the right call. After all, Dusty was the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion and held the coveted big gold belt that heavily inspired the current WWE World Heavyweight Championship Rollins wears today. Had CM Punk's torn triceps injury not happened, Cody's path to WrestleMania would have been clear, but right now, only the American Nightmare knows what the future holds for him in Philly. WrestleMania news now, and before CM Punk's injury, it was expected that he and Seth Rollins would headline Night 1, leaving Night 2 to Cody Rhodes' rematch with Roman Reigns. With Punk now off the card though, the future is far from certain, and this situation may have cost Rollins the main event spot on Saturday night. Zero News reports that as of right now, the planned main event for Night 1 will see Women's World Champion Rhea Ripley defend against Rollins' wife, Becky Lynch. While there's a big push for the World Heavyweight title to close, Rollins needs a headliner attraction to secure the spot, and many options are being considered. One idea includes a triple threat match for Rollins' title on Night 1, with some SmackDown superstars being traded to Raw to add some star power. This all hinges on Cody Rhodes choosing Roman Reigns over Rollins, and it may be some time before we know what the plans are for the main event of Night 1. During this week's AEW Dynamite, Wardlow's right knee was seemingly hurt and he was seen limping, but he'd take to Twitter after the match to say his knee was fine. Well, it turns out that this may not be the case, as on Wrestling Observer Radio, Brian Alvarez said he'd been informed that things are not fine at all. Wardlow is set to be checked out, with AEW fearing it's a torn meniscus, which admittedly could have been much worse for the former TNT champion. Wardlow is currently aligned with the United Kingdom faction, which is led by Adam Cole, who is out of action himself with an injury that has cost him months in the ring. Hopefully, Wardlow doesn't join Cole on the injured list, but for all his talk of being fine after this week's match with Commander, we'll have to wait for a medical exam to see if that's really the case. In the 2024 Women's Royal Rumble match, Liv Morgan made her return to the ring after a lengthy injury and would score a massive elimination by throwing out Jade Cargill. While speaking to Lucha Libre Online, Liv Morgan talked about her Royal Rumble return and working with Cargill, and had some choice words about the WWE free agent. She said, Jade Cargill is a big star, and she's going to be an even bigger star, but I did eliminate her from the Women's Royal Rumble. She was not ready for me, she was not prepared for me, she was not expecting me, and I showed her exactly why you should never, ever, ever do that. You always have to prepare for Liv, because you never know what I'm going to do. Despite returning at the Rumble, Morgan was not on this week's episode of Raw, and Jade Cargill also did not appear on the broadcast. Expectations are high for Cargill, who was rumored to feud with Charlotte Flair before the Queen's injury, and could Morgan be Jade's first feud in WWE? Time will tell. All we know is that Jade Cargill will be a huge name for WWE's women's division going forward, but she hasn't forgotten where she got her start in the world of pro wrestling. Last month, Cargill said she couldn't have gotten a better start in her career than in AEW, adding that it helped prepare her for WWE, which many fans of the All Elite promotion took issue with. Some argued that Jade had dismissed AEW as a stepping stone on her way to WWE and nothing more, and after a lot of tribalistic comments, Cargill felt the need to respond. On Twitter, Jade said she's proud of where she came from and proud of where she is, and said that those making up fake reports about her is not what she is about. Jade Cargill had one of, if not the most dominant career in the history of AEW, and despite leaving and promptly signing for WWE, the former TBS champion is proud to have called AEW home. SmackDown news now, as this Friday's show will be the first edition of the Blue Brand on the road to WrestleMania, with plenty already being advertised for the broadcast. Logan Paul will be on the show, while Bailey will declare her WrestleMania 40 opponent, but there will also be an influx of NXT superstars. PW Insider has learned that Braun Breaker, Carmelo Hayes, and Trick Williams will all be on the show, and each of these men have been linked to SmackDown as of late. Hayes has been appearing on SmackDown ever since the US title contenders tournament, while Trick Williams earned a huge pop when he saved Hayes from a 2-on-1 attack last week. On this week's Raw, SmackDown GM Nick Aldis was seen speaking to Adam Pearce before cutting their conversation short, stating he had to take a call from Braun Breaker. Could Breaker be the next SmackDown call-up? That remains to be seen, but expect big things to happen tonight on the road to WrestleMania 40. Back to AEW as RVD made a surprise appearance on this week's Dynamite as the mystery opponent of Swerve Strickland, who was able to defeat the WWE Hall of Famer in a hardcore match. While Strickland got the win, RVD certainly impressed, as on Twitter, fans shared their astonishment at how well the 53-year-old worked in the main event. One fan said that RVD was still moving like he was in his 20s, while another said he's doing better than Pepsi Phil, a dig at the currently injured ex-AEW star CM Punk. Another said that RVD hasn't missed a step, and with rave reviews like these, we expect RVD will be back in an AEW ring sooner rather than later. Last week, Dwayne Johnson joined TKO's board of directors, and as part of this deal, he has been granted full ownership of his The Rock moniker. The name helped catapult Dwayne Johnson into megastardom and is also a nod to his father Rocky Johnson, so it's not hard to see why it means so much to the Brahma Bull. On Instagram this week, Johnson touted the unprecedented and historic deal, adding that The Rock is a complete lunatic who has given him everything. Johnson said that The Rock allowed him to be himself on TV, and owning the name means everything to his family, including his late father, who Dwayne said is somewhere smiling. Not just one of WWE's top superstars ever, but Johnson joins TKO with a wealth of business experience, and we'll have to see what The Rock's cooking as part of TKO's board of directors. Later this month, WWE will host its Elimination Chamber event in Perth, marking the company's first premium live event in Australia since 2018. The show will see tens of thousands of fans fill the Optus Stadium, and Australia's own Rhea Ripley is ready to put on a show like none other for the crowd. Speaking to Sam Roberts of Not Same Wrestling, Ripley shared her goals for Elimination Chamber Perth and wants to defend the Women's World Championship in the titular structure. She said, "I'd be down for it, I've done it before. Let's be honest here, I love a bit of brutality. Give me some steel, give me some weapons, give me some pods, I don't care. I love all that stuff, I live for this." Ripley has appeared in one Elimination Chamber match, that being at Elimination Chamber 2022, in a match won by Bianca Belair. Putting her title on the line against 5 other women this close to WrestleMania is a bold strategy, but Ripley clearly wants to assert her dominance later this month in her home country. During a recent episode of WWE NXT, William Regal made his return to programming after over a year away and confirmed that Ava is the new and youngest ever general manager. Regal added that if Ava ever needs him, he's only a phone call away. And could we be seeing more of the Brit on TV after his lengthy break from the company? During the NXT Vengeance Day media call, Shawn Michaels was asked about Regal's future on WWE NXT television and teased that we could see him in cameo roles on the program. He said, "He came down here recently to endorse our new GM Ava. She's already wielding pretty good power and doing a good job. As he mentioned to Ava, his phone is always open. He is there for her counsel in any way he can help. Here at NXT, when you have a staple and a foundational person like William Regal, you have to have more than just one shot with him here and there." I think everybody was extremely excited about his brief cameo on NXT television. I have no doubt we will have some other cameos by William Regal in the future as well. Regal was released from AEW early to be with his son Charlie Dempsey under the condition that he couldn't appear on WWE programming for the entirety of 2023. That window of time has since expired, and Regal is currently WWE's Vice President of Global Talent Development, and we'll be seeing more of him on TV if HBK's words are anything to go by. Are you excited to see more of William Regal on TV? And if so, what would you like to see him do? Let us know in the comments. And we're ending with more from the Vince McMahon scandal now, as the allegations against the former WWE chairman have sent shockwaves through the wrestling world, to say the least. One person who knows McMahon personally is Jeff Jarrett, who, as the story goes, held McMahon up for money in 1999 when he was the Intercontinental Champion and his contract had expired. Jarrett was blacklisted from WWE for nearly 2 decades before being brought back, and on an episode of his My World podcast, Double J spoke about the allegations against Vince McMahon. He said, "The screenshots that I read, it was all toxic. It was unbelievable and hard to wrap my head around all of it. It is disturbing, and for all intents and purposes, it is the end of an era, and it is a new day in the professional wrestling business. The joke was he was going to die in that seat, but the tragedy of how the man Vince McMahon sits today is unbelievable." McMahon may be out of WWE, but this situation is far from over, and we'll have to see what's to come as more is revealed as part of this lawsuit.